Watch them chop it up and make you feel the groove. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson. Today's lesson is on strumming. It is Strumming 101. This is everything you need to know. Now for some of you, you might already know how to strum, but maybe you don't know how to read rhythms. And so what this lesson will provide for you is the ability to attach reading rhythms to the chords that you're playing. Okay? Now, in this lesson, I go through your basic chords. And the basic chords, I mean, for guitar, the chords that you would play in open position. And by open position, I mean you're fretting some notes, but some of the notes are open and they're ringing through. And by open, I mean it's just the string. So for example, that note in this chord is just ringing out. So these are open chords down at the bottom. These are the ones that you learn when you first start playing an instrument. Certainly as you go up the neck, you play closed voice chords, but we're not worried about that right now. We'll get there, but we're not worried about that right now. If you need a refresher as a guitarist on how to play these basic chords, you can go to my lesson where I teach all the basic chords, the open position chords down here at the bottom, the first ones that you learned. Okay. Now you're going to see some kids up there on my screen, right? And so my son is, it's tough with this camera, over there. These 4 kids are actually just 2 kids. And so my son, August, is 4. He's playing a miniature guitar that only has 3 strings. It's not a ukulele, but it's a little mini guitar. And then he's playing harmonica. And my daughter there is playing piano and she's playing guitar. And I wanted to put my kids up here because they love music. They're playing music often, but they're not prodigies. You know, they're not kids that just immediately picked up an instrument and started playing it and were amazing. It's just that they consistently practice a little bit often, and it's still fun for them. And what happens is those little bits really add up. And so this stuff is not easy when you first start off, right? Every now and again, I remind myself what it's like to play guitar as a beginner. I'll flip my guitar around and try and play left-handed, and I immediately am reminded of how hard it is to do certain things with your hands. On guitar specifically, sometimes you have fingers that need to move this way while you have other fingers that need to move that way. And as a beginner, you don't have a lot of finger independence, right? But your hands memorize it. So, for example, you know, if I'm playing something, I can sit here and talk to you while I'm playing it. And the fact is, I'm not really thinking about what I'm playing because my hands have memorized it. And I can just talk to you and present information while I'm doing this, right? And that's because just the repetition of it puts it in your hands. And so that's what you want to do with this lesson is you really want to repeat this lesson until you feel comfortable with all of the strumming and the chords. Okay. Another thing is you may not be able to play all of the chords in time. And that is totally okay the first time you play this, maybe even the first 3 times you play this. What you can do is just practice your right hand and leave your left hand muting your strings like this. So by doing that, you can still practice your right hand and develop your right hand without your left hand slowing you down. Okay, now there will be a time that you need to have your left hand catch up. And I'm going to tell you that this is a major pro tip right here. People always do this. They'll play something and then they'll go to switch chords, and then their left hand is doing mental gymnastics, and they finally find where they're at, and then they play, and then the same thing again. And so what that means is you're doing the exercise too quickly. When you are applying your left hand into the exercise, you only want to go as fast as you can, execute the chord change in time. Okay, so what you want to do is take the whatever chords are in the exercise, go between them. So if those are the 2 chords in my exercise, and that's as quickly as I can change in time, then that's how slow I need to do my exercises. Okay, and it's okay to go slow because your left hand is going to catch up so much quicker if you give it a chance. So it's okay to practice just your right hand by itself so that you can play faster and practice strumming. But when you do apply the chords, you want to make sure that you slow down enough so that your left hand can make the changes in time. And that is a really big pro tip for success. Okay. Now, right here, I have a device called a metronome. And a lot of your phones are you can just download a metronome app, or you can even use a web browser. You could search online metronome and you can pull up a metronome. But basically, it just keeps time for you. And so, when you think about like different songs, like, for example, Staying Alive. Staying Alive is 100 beats per minute. That's why they use it a lot when they're teaching CPR, because they want you to do 100 beats per minute of chest compressions, right? When you think about your heart rate, a good heart rate is probably 60 to 100. That's pretty normal. 60 to 100 beats per minute. So how many clicks per minute, right? So 60 beats per minute is just 1 beat for every second. Okay, so Staying Alive is about 100 beats. Oh, you can't tell by the way I use my walk, right? And so you kind of get that in your head, that song. Another song that a lot of people will use as a reference is Hotel California, right? So you kind of have that song in your head. On a dark desert highway, cool wind in my hair, right? And so you can, if you don't have a metronome on hand and your music says, hey, this song is about 74 beats per minute, then you can think, oh, that's somewhere around Hotel California on a dark desert high. And then you kind of have a reference point, okay? Because a lot of times on music, they're going to tell you how many beats per minute your song is, okay? So this is your friend when you're practicing, because when you're practicing, you want to be able to play at slow tempos and at quick tempos. And believe it or not, anything you do, it's actually hardest at the extremes. So around the middle, it's pretty easy, respectively. But as you slow things down, it's really hard to play in time. As you speed things up, it's really hard to play in time. So this is your friend because you want to be able to practice things all the way from medium down to slow, medium up to fast, so that you can get really proficient. Okay, one more thing I need to say before we begin is that your hand goes up and down, basically, on a guitar. Now, if you're playing piano and you're going through this video, as you read the rhythms, this is what I want you to do today. You don't even have to play piano. If you know some basic chords on piano, then you can play these on piano and kind of break up the rhythm across your fingers. If you're not there yet, you can just tap, okay? So if the first rhythm exercise is da 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 da, then which it's not, but if that's what it was, then on piano you could be like da 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 da. Right, I have the hiccups. Perfect timing for the hiccups. Da 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 da, and you can tap on a table, or if you know chords, you can play chords. If you know this much, you can play like the root and the fifth of the chord in your left hand, and you can play the triad in your right hand. Da 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 da. Maybe you hold out your left hand and you do the rhythm with your right hand. A lot of adaptations you could do. If you're playing ukulele and you're going through this video, then you have to look up how to play the ukulele chords, because that's not on the graphic. Okay, I basically show a guitar chord graphic for the chords, and I'm just randomly going through different chords that you would need to know. So we're going to see how we do here. All right, so here is the first exercise, number 1. It has an E minor and an A minor. Okay, so let's give it a shot. So I'm going to set my metronome to, I'm going to go slow. We're going to maybe around 60. I'll go even number, 60. Okay, so that's going on in the background. Now, I'm going to grab a trusty pick, and the way that I hold my pick is I just put these 2 fingers here and put that in there. Okay, 2 fingers in between, right? And I want to hold my pick as light as possible without dropping it. And I want to get used to the feeling of having a pick in my hand. It's going to move around, right? And I want to be okay with that. Okay, when I'm playing, the number one thing is that your right hand is relaxed. Now, I tend to play with an open hand, and I post because that's what I've done since I was 7 years old. But I would say that the people who are really, really wonderful at strumming have a relaxed closed hand, and they're using their middle finger to really support their first finger on their up. So when I'm thinking about it, I'll try and keep a closed hand, a relaxed closed hand. But I'll probably open up my hand because that's how I've always done it. So, okay, here we go. Number 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, so you can see that there are these quarter notes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in my head, I want to chop that beat in half. Dot, 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 right? And I want to think 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. That's kind of this, we call it subdividing, right? Because it's divided. This number over here, this top 4 means 1, 2, 3, 4. And the bottom number, this is what confuses beginners. This bottom number is just secret code language for quarter note. So it's saying there are 4 quarter notes worth of music per measure. Okay. Now up here, you have this little symbol, which means down. This symbol means up strum. Okay. Now, when you strum down, your hand just goes down. When you strum up, I'm going to turn off the metronome. That's probably driving you guys batty. When I strum up, this is what a lot of beginners do. They paintbrush, okay? They feel like they have to strum all of the notes down and all of the notes up, like that, okay? And so I have this little tool here to demonstrate, okay? When you paint, you do want to paint like that, right? And you have all this fluidity in your wrist and you're trying to get every single thing. But when you're strumming guitar, you actually don't have to hit all the strings on the up strum. Notice how when I go down, I hit them all. But when I go up, I'm just kind of getting a few. By the way, I don't even have to turn my wrist if I want to strum them all. Okay? Now, the reason that I included these up strums is because your hand physically goes up whether you have a note or not. It goes up here on the and of 1. On the second half of this beat, if I were to chop this note into 2 equal parts, think about it like I'm tapping my foot, right? If I'm tapping my foot, when my foot goes up, that's the second half of the beat, okay? As my foot goes up, the same thing happens with my hand. My hand goes up, right? Okay, so enough on exercise 1. Exercise 2 is basically this same thing, but each of those quarter notes is chopped into half note or eighth notes. Half of what a quarter note is an eighth note. Okay, so here we're going to play this exercise now with A minor and C. If you don't know those chords, again, just mute your strings and strum along. If you do know those chords, play the chords. 1, 2, ready, and. Easy breezy, right? Now, there's something I have to tell you, and then I won't mention it again. In music, we can play something straight or we can swing it, okay? And when we play something straight, it's just how you heard it. 2 equal parts. Dut, 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 dut. If you swing something, you're delaying the second eighth note of every beat, the back half of every beat. So it sounds, instead of even, like perfectly robotically even, it's swung. And when you swing it, it's like da, 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 da. That's swinging the eighth note. So if I were to play this exercise swung, it'd be like. Okay. So you want to know those two distinctions. We're going to practice today even, straight eighths. But as you go, I'm going to make the PDF available for this for download so that you can practice on your own. You should practice both straight and you should practice with swung eighths. Super important. Okay. So that is exercise 2. Exercise 3. Now we're combining eighth notes and quarter notes. Okay. And you can see the and of 2 and the and of 3 and the and of 4 are silent. Your hand is going up, but it's not strumming. Okay. And for these chords, we're playing C and G. 1 and 2, and here we go. Notice how I held up that last note. I might not do that so much for the rest of the exercises, but duration is a big deal. So when you see a note like this, a whole note, it's counted for that full measure. So you want to observe a whole note and play it for the full bar. If you're in an ensemble, right? And maybe you have a conductor, you're holding that note out until the conductor cuts you off, right? When it's a last note. But otherwise, you have to count for yourself, and you have to count 1, 2, 3, 4 off on what would be the next beat. So the full 4 beats, and then you cut off. Okay, great. Our next chord progression is E minor, G, and E minor. There's a few ways to play G. You could play G, lots of different ways. So I covered in my last lesson, or you can Google how to play G chord, or you could just look at the picture and pick some fingers to do it. There's really no wrong way to play G. Some are better than others depending on context, but I cover that in other lessons. Ask me in the comments, and I'm happy to chime in. Okay, so here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Great. Number 5, feel free to pause this whenever you need to, if you need to practice these on your own. I'm just trying to blast through them all. Number 5 is E minor and D and E minor, okay? And here we have eighth notes on beat 3, but the rest are quarter notes. 2, and here we go. 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Okay, great. Next one, number 6, G and D. 1, 2, and here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Okay, great. And a great way to cut off is to use your hand. You can even barely apply pressure to your strings to have a slow little, like a fade out on a track. You can control that. Okay. Next exercise, number 7. C, D, and C. 1, 2, ready, and. Four, off. Great. Number 8. 1, 2, ready, and. Great. Number 9, E and A minor. Ready, and. Number 10, 1, 2, ready, and. Great. Number 11, ready, and. Great. Number 12, 2, and here we go. Three, 4. Great. Number 13, E minor. Now, for the first time here, we have 3 chords that we're playing: E minor, C to G. Now, for this one in particular, this is when I like. I'm going to mute this for a moment. I talked about different Gs, right? And there's this G where you have your middle finger playing the bass note, first finger, and you can either just do your third finger on the top string, or you could do your third finger and your pinky on the top 2 strings, 3rd fret. That's a very common G. This is a very common G. But this G in particular, where you have your 3rd finger on the 6th string 3rd fret, your middle finger on the 5th string 2nd fret, and your pinky on the 1st string 3rd fret, that's a really good G shape to use when you're using the C chord. Because do you see the difference, the motion that my hand has to go? It's just from here to here, right? Very short distance. And so if I were doing this, it's a lot more motion. And you can, if you know your chords really well, it's no big deal. But when you're a beginner, this really is a better shape, to use. Okay, so let's get our metronome back on. Okay, 2, ready, and. Pretty cool. Starting to sound like music. Okay, here's another progression. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, oh golly, what is happening? This is crazy. I just want to show you some stuff here. Okay, this rhythm and this rhythm are identical. Now, they don't look identical because they're written out 2 different ways. And I wanted to do the first measure with it written this way and the second measure with it written this way so that you could see both examples. Because when you receive music, you're going to see that. Okay, so down here, there's this thing called a tie. And what a tie does is it connects these 2 notes and turns them into one. Okay, so when I play this note, I play an up strum to begin the note, right? And as this note is being held out, it's being held out through this whole time. I don't have to reattack this note with this down. This down is a silent down, just the same way as we've already had a bunch of silent strums. Okay, so down, up, right? And so what that looks like is this: down, up, up. Do you see that silent strum? Down, up, with a weird whisper guy creeping in there. Down, up, up. Okay? Your hand goes down, but it doesn't strum. It's a silent down because all your hand is doing is this, right? If you clicked the mute button for this whole exercise, this is what you would see my right hand doing. But that's not what you would hear. You would hear. Right? That's what you would hear. But if you muted me, it would be. Just down, up, down, up, down, up. So here in this first measure, instead of using a tie, sometimes people will do this. They'll use a quarter note because these two notes, when you have two eighth notes combined into one, they're worth a quarter note of duration. Okay. So eighth, quarter, eighth, right? Eighth, quarter, eighth. So those are the same rhythm, but sometimes when this rhythm is spanning two beats, you'll see this syncopated rhythm. Okay. Syncopation is when you have eighth notes and you have, it's funky. That's what syncopation is. And so this is a syncopated rudiment, basically. It's a really basic syncopation. Short, long, short, short, long, short. Okay. So let's go through that because the next few exercises have this sort of vibe going on. Okay. So we have C, D, and G. 1, 2, ready, and down, up, down, down, up, down, down. Let's try that again. Ready with counts. And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. I get it. That one's a little bit harder. Okay. Our next exercise is a little easier. There's no ties. As you can see, I'm moving in this pattern a quarter note worth of music towards the right. So we just had it on the and of 1. Now we have a quarter note on 2. It's a lot easier. 2, ready, and. Three, 4, off. Okay, great. Okay, here, I feel like we just did this one. No, we didn't, because here's a tie. Number 16 is A minor, C to G. And here we have a tie across the middle note. Now you might be asking, Mr. Bonilla, why didn't you put a quarter note here? Why didn't you put a quarter note here? Like you did in the last example. Well, what's weird is that you don't really see that very often. You see that rudiment, that syncopated rudiment, more often on either the front half of the measure or on the back half of the measure. You don't really see it over the middle of the measure. So in this case, this is what the rhythm would look like, okay? So let's give this a shot. 1, 2, ready, and. I tuned the guitar at the beginning. I promise you I tuned it. It's starting to get a little bit pitchy. But we're gonna roll with it. A little bit of pitchy is okay. It's a little rock and roll. Okay, so this particular exercise is a super common chord progression. In fact, it's so common. This is like the first one that most people learn, but they don't know how to read the rhythm. So this is what the rhythm looks like. It's 1 and 2 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Great. Our next rhythm, number 17, has D minor, G to A minor. I just love the way those three chords sound together. I should write a song with those three chords. You should write a song. We should write a song. Let's write a song with those three chords. It'll be fun. Here we go. 2, and here we go. 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Great. Then for the second part of our song that we're writing, we'll do this chord progression, which is very similar, very sentimental. Listen how pretty that sounds. So the last exercise, 17, was pretty. And then this one. So pretty. Okay, number 18. 1, 2, and here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Let's try that again. Ready, and. Great. Number 19. Now we're going to get happy, little D major chord. Now this one's pretty easy. It's just long notes on beat 4. 2, ready, and. I got a little bit ahead of the beat there, right? So I got to really internalize that. And Mr. Bonilla needs to practice more because the slow tempo is hard for him. 1, 2, and we go. 2, 3, 4, off. Great. Next one. Now this, whoa, look at this. This is fun. So in this second measure, you can see we have a couple ties. 1 and 4. 1 and 4. And then over here, that same syncopation that we had in that previous example where you might sub out these two eighth notes that are tied together are done so right here. So 1 and 4. Okay, but notice we didn't turn this into a quarter note because this is kind of over the middle of the measure, so we don't really do that. Okay, let's give it a shot. 1, 2, ready, and. Pretty. 1 more time. 2, ready, and. 2, 3, 4, off. Great. Number 21. Very similar. It's just instead of a quarter note on the end of the measure or bar, we use the word bar. Instead of a quarter note, we have eighth notes. 2, ready, and. Even there, I was rushing a little bit, right? You really got to break. 1, 2, ready, and. Cool. Next one, number 22, D minor, G, and C. This is a really common progression in jazz, but a lot of times they'll make it like a cooler version of C and a cooler version of D minor. And we'll get there. But for now, we're just going to play the basic open chords. 1. Now, this is that syncopation 2 times in a row. Short, long, short, short, long, short. Say that with me. Ready, and. Short, long, short, short, long, short. Good. And if you're moving your foot with me, it's like short, long, short, short, long, short. Right? That short is on the up. Okay? Let's give it a shot. 1 and 2, and here we go. Cool. Good job. Number 23, we only have 2 left, and then we're done. 1, 2, ready, and. Let's try it one more time. 2, and here we go. Two, 3, 4, off. Great. Last one, guys. It's the same as the last one, but we have eighth notes on the tail of this, of each bar. Eighth notes instead of a quarter note. 1, 2, ready, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, and 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, off. Thank you guys so much. I hope that you practice this. This is not something that you should do once. You should do this as many times as it takes until you're comfortable with all of the chord changes and all of the rhythms. And then you want to take these rhythms and practice them on your own. And then what you want to do is jack up that tempo to something faster. Right? You want to go faster. 2, ready. I almost didn't get it. 1, 2, ready. Right? How fast can we go? 1, 2, 1, 2, ready. Cool. Good job. Hope you had a good time. Keep practicing. We got this. We're going to be amazing guitarists in no time. Proud of you.